The worst guest we've ever had, because people used to ask me who the worst guest was.
Yes, always.
And I never had an answer. I didn't want to offend anyone.
Yes, of course.
But then I can now say it's Harvey Weinstein, because he was on the show.
Really? And was he a bad guest?
Well, apparently, yeah.
For over 2 decades, on a vibrant red couch in the heart of London, Graham Norton has hosted the most delightfully chaotic party on television. He's not just a talk show host. He's a master of ceremonies, an expert at creating an atmosphere. It's a place where A-listers actually let their guard down, where perfectly polished press tour stories get thrown out the window for genuine and often hilarious interactions. The magic of The Graham Norton Show is its unpredictability. It's the carefully curated cocktail of guests who, after a glass of wine, might just forget the cameras are even rolling. Norton, with his lightning-fast wit and infectious laugh, is the glue holding it all together. He has a rare talent for making even the most guarded superstars feel like they're just having a chat at the pub. The result is pure television gold, moments of unscripted hilarity that feel increasingly rare in our polished world. But behind the bright lights and the endless supply of Sauvignon Blanc, not every night is a party. The very formula that makes the show brilliant, the mix of big personalities, the live audience, the alcohol, is also a recipe for potential disaster. For every dream guest who shows up ready to play, there's another who can sour the whole vibe, leaving even the unflappable Norton struggling to keep the ship afloat. As viewers, we see the awkward pauses and the forced smiles. But for years, Graham remained the ultimate professional, rarely, if ever, speaking ill of those who shared his couch. He'd dodge the question, laugh it off, and protect the magic of his show. But now, at 62, after thousands of interviews, the floodgates are starting to open. In recent years, Graham has begun to break his silence, candidly revealing the guests who truly tested his patience, who just didn't get the assignment, or who were, to put it bluntly, a total nightmare. He's naming names, and the reasons are as fascinating as the celebrities themselves. It's not always about diva tantrums or rudeness. Sometimes, the worst guest is the one who says nothing at all. From drunken antics to shocking awkwardness, these are the stories behind the interviews that went completely off the rails. These are the 6 celebrity guests Graham Norton reportedly hated most. For over 20 years, Graham Norton has charmed even the most guarded celebrities on his famous red couch. But what about the guests who were less than charming? The ones who pushed his legendary patience to the limit. After years of smiling through the awkwardness, the stories of the guests Graham Norton allegedly can't stand are finally coming out. From drunken antics to shocking rudeness, these are the 6 celebrities who seem to have earned a spot on Graham's unofficial blacklist. We start with a name that now needs no introduction, one that's become synonymous with the darkest side of Hollywood. But long before he was a convicted criminal, Harvey Weinstein was one of the most powerful producers in the world. When he appeared on The Graham Norton Show, he was at the peak of his power. To the casual viewer, it might have seemed like just another powerful suit sitting next to movie stars. But for Graham Norton, the experience was anything but ordinary. It left a mark that he would only speak about years later, after the world learned the horrifying truth about the man. Graham used to have many clever answers for the worst guest question. But since Weinstein's fall from grace and imprisonment, for heinous sex crimes, Norton has found a definitive and chilling response. I often talk around who my least favorite guest was, but someone reminded me. I have a really good answer to this now, Norton stated. It's Harvey Weinstein. He's in jail, so he gets the prize for the worst guest ever. This isn't just a flip comment. It's a reflection of an experience that was deeply unpleasant long before the monster was revealed. Norton has described Weinstein's behavior on the show as that of a bully, a man who wasn't there to have fun, but to control everything. Unlike other difficult guests, Weinstein's toxicity was just part of his presence. He had an air of arrogance that was completely at odds with the show's fun, collaborative spirit. He would constantly interrupt Graham and the other guests, not with a funny story, but to steer the conversation back to himself. Graham also revealed that he never even wanted Weinstein on the show in the first place. The producer had essentially bullied his way onto the couch. Norton recalled how Weinstein relentlessly emailed him, demanding a spot. "He emailed me and he said, 'I'm in town,'" Graham explained, noting that he tried to politely say no. But Weinstein wouldn't take no for an answer, and eventually, Graham felt he had no choice. That context makes the whole interview even darker. Weinstein wasn't just a guest, he was an invasive presence who forced his way into the cheerful space Norton had built. Looking back, Norton connects the bully he saw on his couch to the monster revealed by the Me Too movement. The interview itself is now a haunting piece of television. Watching it, you can see Graham trying his best to manage a guest who simply refuses to play along. The usual easygoing energy is gone, replaced by a tense, uncomfortable vibe. Harvey. Weinstein wasn't just a bad guest in hindsight because of his crimes. He was a bad guest at the time, a black hole of charisma who sucked the joy out of the room. There's a cardinal sin on a talk show, one that's worse than being drunk or being a diva. It's the sin of being boring. When one of the biggest movie stars in history sits on that red couch, expectations are sky high. You're waiting for legendary stories from iconic film sets, a peek behind the curtain of a Hollywood titan. When that star is Robert De Niro, the pressure is immense. Unfortunately for Graham Norton, the legend of Robert De Niro, the actor, is a world away from the reality of Robert De Niro, the talk show guest. Graham has talked about De Niro's appearances not with anger, but with a kind of tired resignation. He has described the iconic actor as a benign presence, which is both polite and completely devastating. He's not rude, he's just there. The problem, as Norton puts it, is simple. De Niro is just not a storyteller. On a show built entirely around telling stories, that's a fatal flaw. While other actors show up with a bunch of funny anecdotes ready to go, De Niro often comes empty-handed. His answers are famously short, and his ability to spin a good yarn is, by the host's own admission, pretty much non-existent. Norton shared a particularly painful story that perfectly sums up the De Niro experience. The actor had started to tell a story on the show, a rare event that had everyone on the edge of their seats. "We were all leaning in, willing it to be amazing," Norton recalled. This was it, the moment the famously quiet star would finally open up. And then, nothing. De Niro just ran out of steam, looked around and said, "Why am I telling this?" The crushing part, as Norton admitted, was that nobody had an answer. The story was so pointless it had to be cut from the show entirely. This creates a huge challenge for a host like Graham. He's left carrying the entire weight of the interview, desperately trying to pull out a few extra words while keeping the energy up. The contrast is often visible on screen. While other guests are laughing and trading stories, De Niro can look like a quiet, disconnected figure at the end of the couch. At one point, Graham's frustration slipped out as a joke, but you have to think he meant it. "This is hard work, Robert." For a host who prides himself on creating effortless chemistry, a guest who offers so little in return turns what should be a fun chat into a one-man marathon. If Robert De Niro is one end of the difficult guest spectrum, Mark Wahlberg's infamous 2013 appearance is the complete opposite. This wasn't just a guest who was a little tipsy. This was a full-on TV train wreck, an interview that descended into such drunken chaos, it's become legendary. For Graham Norton, it was a night where he had to be a host, a wrangler, and a babysitter all at once. And while it made for cringe-worthy viewing, Norton has been clear that from his seat, it was not fun. He simply described the experience as bad. Wahlberg was on the couch with Michael Fassbender and Sarah Silverman, a great lineup that should have been a classic. But as Norton later explained, the drinks Wahlberg had beforehand kicked in about 20 minutes into the show. The change was immediate. The professional movie star was replaced by a loud, unpredictable, and very drunk version of himself. He kept interrupting Sarah Silverman, refused to let her finish a single story, and just generally took over the show. The physical stuff was even more awkward. At one point, Wahlberg got up, stumbled over to Graham, and plopped himself down on the host's lap, stroking his chest and slurring into the mic. Graham tried to play it off, but you could see how uncomfortable he was. Later, the chaos continued. When Wahlberg started touching Sarah Silverman's leg and reached its peak when he just fell asleep on the couch while Michael Fassbender was telling a story. In a moment of pure relief, Norton joked that Fassbender's story was suddenly going very well now that Wahlberg was unconscious. Years later, Wahlberg claimed his antics were a pre-planned bit with Sarah Silverman to be funny. But whether it was a bit that went too far or just a case of being wasted, it made Graham's job incredibly difficult. "He was just out of it, really out of it," Norton said, not really buying the excuse. He had to work overtime just to keep the show from completely falling apart. For a host who is a master of controlled chaos, Mark Wahlberg brought a level of genuine, unmanageable chaos that pushed even his skills to the absolute limit. Not all difficult. Completely broke down. Hannah's appearance was marked by painfully long silences and one-word answers that left Graham with nowhere to go. It was, as he recalled, like she had been dragged there against her will. Unlike Robert De Niro, who was quiet, but at least present, Hannah seemed to have retreated entirely, creating an awkward vacuum in the conversation. What made the situation so complicated is that her behavior wasn't arrogance. Norton later learned that Hannah suffered from extreme anxiety and had a deep fear of live audiences. He made it clear that she wasn't a diva. She was just terrified. This reframes the whole thing from a story about a bad guest to a more sympathetic, though still professionally nightmarish, story about a person in real distress. It highlights a unique challenge. How do you handle a guest whose difficulty comes from genuine vulnerability? The challenge for Norton was immense. His show depends on the spark between guests. When one guest is an energy black hole, it threatens the whole conversation. He had to try and draw her out without making her more uncomfortable, while also keeping the other guests and the audience entertained. While Graham has expressed frustration over the interview itself, his explanation is always layered with an understanding of her personal struggle. It's a fascinating look behind the celebrity curtain, a reminder that the people on the couch are just that, people, with their own anxieties and fears. There are celebrities, and then there's Madonna, an icon, a trailblazer, a global superstar, who operates on a different level. With that kind of fame comes a certain reputation, that of the ultimate diva, a perfectionist who does things her way and her way only. As Graham Norton discovered, interviewing a living legend comes with its own set of challenges. While he hasn't called her his absolute worst guest, he's shared stories that paint a picture of a star who can be demanding and, well, a little rude. The most notable incident happened during her 2012 appearance. A group of her superfans, who were also skilled doll makers, had been invited to present her with a series of dolls representing her most iconic eras. It was a heartfelt tribute. But what should have been a sweet moment took a turn. As the fans presented the dolls, Madonna's reaction was less than gracious. According to Norton, she was a bit rude to them, criticizing their work instead of just saying thank you. The interesting twist, as Norton himself pointed out, is that the fans absolutely loved it. They hadn't come to see Madonna the person. They had come to see Madonna the icon, and her demanding attitude was exactly what they wanted. But for Graham, who is responsible for the vibe in the room, it was a negative moment. His job is to make everyone feel welcome, and watching a guest be rude to adoring fans, even if they enjoyed it, goes against the warm spirit of his show. Beyond that, interviewing Madonna is just tough. She is famously guarded and media-savvy. While Graham's show is designed to break down those barriers, a star of Madonna's magnitude can often remain untouchable. The free-flowing, spontaneous chat that makes the show great can be hard to achieve with a guest who is so fiercely in control of her own image. It's clear that interviews like that are more work than play for Graham. It's less of a casual chat and more of a negotiation between two masters of their craft. Sometimes, a difficult guest is just a perfect storm of problems. Enter Mickey Rourke. The actor, known for his intense roles and dramatic life story, is an electrifying screen presence. On a talk show couch, however, that electricity can manifest as exhausting, unpredictable chaos. Graham Norton has spoken of Rourke's appearances with the weary tone of a man who has survived a battle. He has described the experience as both exhausting and boring, not because nothing happened, but because managing everything that was happening was a thankless job. One of the biggest issues was Rourke's constant smoking. He wanted to smoke all the time, Norton recounted. I'd turn away for a second, turn back, and he'd have lit another cigarette. This left Graham having to police his guest on live TV. It was so boring. You feel like a teacher taking children on a school trip, not a chat show host, he said. That constant need to intervene shatters the illusion of a relaxed chat and sucks the fun out of the room. Adding to the difficulty was the drinking. Norton recalled seeing Rourke getting out of his car before one show already holding a bottle of Jack Daniels. By the time the cameras were rolling, it was clear a good bit of it was gone. Those nights are quite hard work where you're just trying to keep it together and get to the finishing line, Graham admitted. But Rourke's difficult behavior wasn't just about smoking and drinking. His interactions with other guests could be deeply uncomfortable. During an appearance with Jessica Biel, Rourke's conduct turned cringeworthy when he started aggressively hitting on her right there on the couch, leaving her visibly uncomfortable. It's one thing for a guest to be uncooperative, but it's another for them to make a fellow guest feel awkward and targeted. In those moments, Graham has to pivot from host to protector. For him, Mickey Rourke seems to represent a uniquely draining combination. A guest who seems disinterested, who ignores the rules, and who makes others on the couch deeply uncomfortable. So there you have it, a peek behind the curtain of the world's most beloved talk show. From the chilling arrogance of a Hollywood monster to the silent anxiety of a terrified star, these stories reveal the immense challenge of being Graham Norton. It's a job that requires more than just quick wit. It requires the patience of a saint, the diplomacy of an ambassador, and the endurance of a marathon runner. These 6 examples show that a bad guest comes in many forms. It's not always the loudest person in the room. Sometimes, it's the quietest. What connects them all is how they disrupt the delicate chemistry that makes Graham's show so magical. They break the flow, they test the host, and they remind us that what looks like an effortless boozy chat is actually a masterfully conducted performance. Graham's ability to navigate these moments is perhaps the greatest testament to his skill. He is the ultimate professional who, even on the worst of nights, still manages to make us all feel like we're in on the joke. But what do you think? Who do you remember as the most awkward guest on Graham's couch? Was Mark Wahlberg's drunken display hilarious or just uncomfortable? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look behind the scenes of the Big Red Couch, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.